Hello, welcome to the student walkthrough video for GCSE History Paper 1. Here we are focusing on Paper 1 as a whole, what this paper looks like and how you can do well. We have other videos available for this paper which go into more depth for the individual questions. My name is Sam and I am a subject specialist for Pearson Edexcel. You will also hear from Katie later in this video, who is the Deputy Lead for History and a Senior Consultant at Harris Federation. Today we are going to look at Paper 1. What does Paper 1 look like? And how can you do well on this paper? You will have an hour and 20 minutes to complete Paper 1, unless you have extra time when you will have an hour and 40 minutes. Each Paper 1 option is divided into two sections, a thematic study and a linked study of a historic environment. Section A of your Paper 1 will focus on the historic environment. This means studying a particular place in a particular period of time. Section B of your Paper 1 will focus on your thematic study. This part of the paper is about change and continuity across a long period of time in British history. You need to understand how your topic changed and stayed the same from the medieval period to the present day. Here we can see the four options that are available for Paper 1. Have a look and find the option that you are studying. If you are studying crime and punishment, your historic environment will focus on Whitechapel between 1870 and 1900. If you are studying medicine in Britain, your historic environment will focus on the British sector of the Western Front between 1914 and 1918. If you are studying warfare and British society, your historic environment will focus on London and the Second World War. If you are studying migrants in Britain, your historic environment will focus on Notting Hill between 1948 and 1970. For Section A, you will be assessed on features of the period and also through a historical inquiry where you will have two contemporary sources to analyse and evaluate. For Section B, you will be assessed on your knowledge and understanding, with questions that focus on similarity and difference, and change and continuity. This may include a consideration of turning points, the significance of events, the extent of change, the causes and consequences of change. Notice that the marks increase through the paper. Ensure that you allow yourself enough time to answer question 5 and 6 really well, as it is worth 20 marks in total. That's nearly 40% of the marks on this paper. We have individual videos for each question on Paper 1, so spend some time watching those too. In the thematic study, an understanding of chronology is essential. Also, a secure understanding of the terminology of the different time periods in history is needed too. So learn the dates and the centuries, but also learn the other labels that are used, such as medieval, early modern, Renaissance, modern. When answering a question in the exam, pay close attention to any dates or periods stated in the question. You need to make sure that your response stays within the correct dates, because you won't be credited for any information that is outside of these dates. Each of the options has 4 time periods covered, and they provide a framework for understanding the topic, but they should not be taken in isolation from each other. You need to be thinking about developments across time periods. As we've said, change, continuity. You also need to know the themes within each topic. Within each time period, there are 2 themes. They are repeated for each time period, and they will allow you to make a detailed comparison over time, which is what your examiner wants to see. Have a good grasp of terminology. And if we take medicine as an example, know the difference between the cause of illness versus an approach to prevention or methods of treatment. It is really important to identify the aim of a question, but also to be precise and accurate in your explanation. You need to be able to see trends across time periods. Here, the depth of knowledge about an event or person is less important than breadth of knowledge that can be discussed when you are analysing the significance of a person, or even within the time frame of the question. Such as, in the early modern period, your knowledge of the Royal Society would be less about the ins and outs and exactly what the Royal Society did, and more about the impact and the influence of their work. It is useful for you to know the relevant factors for your option, and here we have them listed for all of the thematic studies. The factors are a really useful way of thinking about your paper as a whole, thinking about how the factors work together to bring about or to hinder change and developments. These factors could also be used in questions. For example, they could appear in a judgment question, where you could be asked to weigh up factors, such as the role of an individual or an institution in influencing change.
How can you do well on this paper? For the historic environment section of your paper, you need to understand that a range of sources exist. But how do you know which sources the examiner expects you to know about? Well, on the specification document, which can be found on their website, there is a section that illustrates which sources the examiners expect you to be familiar with. For example, here in the Whitechapel unit, they'd expect you to have knowledge of Charles Booth's survey or coroner's reports and knowing what they are and what type of information might be in them. Then you could use this to make your own list of sources to check how confident you are in discussing them. You can then practice source utility questions on exemplar exam papers. You can use textbooks, revision books, and lots of sources can always be found on websites. You also need to have a secure chronological understanding. This paper 1 is assessing 1,000 years of British history, so it's important that you know what comes in what order. Your history exam is not just a test of historical dates, but you do need to have sound chronological understanding. For example, in the medicine unit, can you put the 4 bits of information into the correct time period? Do you know which one comes first? And then what influence are they each having on medicine through time? Here they are then in the correct time period. And what does the Black Death reveal about medical understanding in the medieval period? Or how does the Royal Society influence medical progress? Or why was the NHS such an important change for British medicine? You could pair up with other students or ask someone at home to help test you on your chronological understanding. Another way to do well on this paper is make sure you're familiar and comfortable with the key terminology. Pearson have provided a list of suggested keywords that can be found on their website. Take, for example, this word migration from the Migration in Britain unit. It can have many different meanings. It can mean voluntary migration or forced migration. And it's important not only to know the terminology to use in your answers, but also to understand the questions. Don't forget question 5 and 6. There are marks available for the use of specialist terminology, such as these in your writing. Also continuing the thinking around language, think about how you can describe change or continuity, which is what the main focus of paper 1 is. Take, for example, the abolition of the death penalty from the Crime and Punishment unit. What language would you use to describe the speed of the abolition? Whether it was a good thing, how much it changed, and how important was that change. Using these words will help you explain a lot more clearly in your answers. And then you need to know your stuff. There's no getting away from that. Again, you can go back to the specification. You can create checklists of how confident you are. You can also make your own flashcards. For example, here from the Crime and Punishment unit, you can make a flashcard on witchcraft. On one side, you have all the questions, what it was, who was involved, why did the trials intensify? And on the other side, you could have the answers as well. You can then test yourself or ask somebody else to test you. I know other students have made posters, mind maps. There's lots of different ways that you can use this that suit your best style of revision. Along with the resources already discussed, you can also find a document on the Pearson website called Revision Top Tips for Summer 2025 Guide. That brings us to the end of this walkthrough video. Remember, we have videos for every question on each paper available, and more information for students can be found on our website under Student Support. Good luck in your upcoming exams.